Hi, this is Dan Gilvazan, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 222 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, Optimus Solo, and joining me today, as usual, is the Comic Concierge. Hello, Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. We are on the verge of a new series here, like we kind of talked about a few times towards the end of our Alfred Hitchcock series, which, by the way, if you were not following along for those, we encourage you to go back and watch some Alfred Hitchcock movies and listen to us ramble on about them. We covered 15 films, and then last episode we did do a wrap party, which was all kinds of fun, giving out different awards and our rankings of our Alfred Hitchcock films. So if you missed out on that, you can go back and watch or listen to those episodes. And then today, based on some interactions we had with one of the actors throughout the Hitchcock filmography, we decided to get a little bit more into the world and life of Cary Grant. So we've already covered 4 films throughout the Hitchcock series that Cary Grant appeared in, and now we wanted to start looking at some of the ones that were non-Hitchcock films. So we got about roughly 8 films that we're going to look at, but as you saw with the Hitchcock film, Hitchcock series, sometimes that can mean more. Maybe we'll cut it short, you never know, but we got 8 that we're kind of tossing around to add to the 4 that we've already seen. Before we get into what's first, Dan, just any thoughts or kind of feelings as far as starting this new series and what you're looking forward to, or why you were on board with it?
As mentioned, when we were doing the Hitchcock retrospective, just, when we got to a lot of the Cary Grant movies, he was a fascinating figure to watch. There are so many of his films that I have yet to see or have only seen once. And considering he's such a huge name in the world of movie making and things like that, it felt like a good opportunity. And plus, just watching the Hitchcock films, I just got in the mood to watch more movies of that era. So it seemed like a good way to kind of pivot and keep it going.
Absolutely. I agree. He was a highlight of a lot of the films that we covered that he appeared in. I was drawn to him, and I watched a biography on him. There's a couple different ones out there, but I've at least watched one of them because I was just kind of fascinated by his life in general and his journey through Hollywood. I think akin to like a Grace Kelly, they have very interesting stories out of the folks that we talked about during that retrospective. So I thought it was fitting to catch up on a few of these. There's a couple that I have seen beforehand, and there was a couple that Dan had seen beforehand, and then there's going to be a good amount of first-time watches as well throughout these films. Is there any film in particular that you're looking forward to the most, or is it all kind of a even slate here?
I'm looking to see some more the movies that he was nominated for an Oscar for, because maybe some of his more dramatic work, because we've seen hits of that with some of the Hitchcock films, but I'm curious to see like what else he can do beyond, when he's in kind of a different mode, which he is kind of a bit of a different mode here, but what we can get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely saw some James Bond-esque roles in the Hitchcock series, and a tiny bit of comedy, obviously, as well in North by Northwest. But yeah, I'm interested to see that. You mentioned a couple of his award nominations. So that would be like None But the Lonely Heart and Penny Serenade, I believe, were the 2 that he was nominated for. And then we have some classics that we'll bring up that maybe a lot of people have seen, or maybe it's a blind spot and it'll give you an excuse to watch another film. I'm kind of like you, Dan, right now. If I have an excuse to watch more old films, I'm kind of down for it right now. Like I'm going through that phase, and both of us have continued to watch a handful of Hitchcock films that we didn't cover. How many have you watched now since out of the ones that we didn't cover?
I have watched, I think, 2. I watched the Man Who Knew Too Much, as well as the Lady Vanishes. I've seen. The Man Who Knew Too Much was like leaving Netflix. I think it might be gone now. And then Lady Vanishes is on like Tubi or one of those, like one of the free sites. So
yeah, I watched those 2, and then I decided that with that box set that I referenced a few times during the series, if there was one that I had the disc for, that I didn't even have to worry about searching and seeing if it was free, that I would watch those as well. So I've watched the 2 that you watched. I've also watched, the most recent one was The Torn Curtain. I just finished that yesterday. And then The Trouble with Harry, I watched that one as well. I think it's just those 4. I might be missing one, but definitely have been catching up with a few more of those, and I'm interested in what this series will lead me to watch after it as well, as I try to fill in some blind spots, because I definitely have a ton of blind spots from the 1930s through the 1960s. Surprise, surprise. So, all right. So we're starting off today with we're going to go through chronological order for these first 8-ish films, and then if we want to cover more, we'll have to break that rule a little bit. But starting in chronological order would take us to Bringing Up Baby first. So I just want to get what you knew about the film beforehand, and then we'll go to some facts about the film, and then we'll break it down. So any prior knowledge to Bringing Up Baby? Had you seen it? Had you heard anything about it? Or how are you going into this one?
I'm going into this one relatively blind. Like, I've heard of it, of course, and I've heard it when you see lists of like the greatest comedies of all time. Often see it on lists like that, as well as like some of the best performances by Cary Grant, but like couldn't really name you like a scene that it's notorious for and anything like that. So this was as blind of a watch for me as any of the retrospective we did for Hitchcock.
Yeah, same with me. I knew of the film. Like, it's one that the title because you've heard it on a lot of different lists like that, or you've heard other critics bring it up in different fashions. So like, I knew the title, and I knew it was one that we probably should be watching if we're talking about Cary Grant. Other than that, I just knew Cary Grant was in it, and that was it. So like, totally blind going into this one as well. So Dan's going to give us a breakdown of the film, and then we will break into our thoughts on it right after that.
Before the guys from Hangover were hanging out with a tiger, Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn were chasing down a baby leopard in the screwball comedy Bringing Up Baby, directed by Howard Hawks. Released in 1938, Bringing Up Baby was actually a financial flop, despite its massive star power. Maybe regular audiences weren't used to seeing Cary Grant as the sheepish nerd wearing glasses. Those glasses the studio requested to be removed, but Hawks refused. So were they right, considering the lack of success in the box office? Well, maybe Bringing Up Baby was playing the long game, as it gained more and more notoriety throughout the years and is often considered one of the greatest comedic films of all time. For example, it ranks 88 on AFI's 100 Years 100 Movie list. Also, it is included in the U.S. National Register by the Library of Congress for being culturally and historically significant. In the film, Cary Grant plays David Huxley, a mild-mannered paleontologist on the brink of securing both a major museum donation and a marriage. His ordinary life is thrown into cosmic disarray when he meets Susan Vance, played by Hepburn. She is an impulsive socialite who drags him into a whirlwind of absurd events, including the care of a tame leopard named Baby. Bringing Up Baby is a classic screwball comedy that showcases the chaotic charm of the 1930s. It pairs two of the era's biggest stars, Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, in a zany tale of misunderstandings, misplaced leopards, and romantic hijinks. This was Hepburn's first real attempt at a screwball comedy. She previously had been seen more as a serious actress. The leopard baby was a real animal. To manage safety, scenes with Cary Grant and the leopard were filmed separately using a double or composite shots. The film even fell into public domain in the 1960s due to a copyright lapse, but was later restored and that copyright regained. So this film has gone on quite a journey by itself. How does it hold up all these years later, and how does it fit into the larger career of Cary Grant as we look to kick off our newest retrospective, sending it back to Kevin and myself to discuss just that.
All right, so those are the facts for Bringing Up Baby from 1938. Dan, we've had a chance to watch the film now. What was your first impression?
Well, I think, going into comedy, if any genre, I feel tends to maybe age the worst, because comedy is often about context. And context changes over, especially looking how long it's been since this came out. But a lot of the comedy here definitely is more, I think, universal, broad comedy for sure, that is not necessarily tied to a certain time or place. It certainly has a style to it that is maybe you would call, perhaps clearly of the time. And I was a little worried about that. Like, will it hold up? Will it be really funny? And I think this is, a good example of a movie that is very much empowered by its stars, like Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. They are great. They work really well together. This being Katharine Hepburn's like really first time at comedy, could not tell that. It's hard to go from drama to comedy. People not talking about when you have someone who's a comedic actor doing drama like a Robin Williams, like how impressive that can be. I think it can be just as impressive, if not more impressive, to be a more dramatic actor than do comedy and do it well, because it's a very different skill set. And I thought she did a really good job. I know she had a lot of help and training along those lines. I do think it is a movie that it goes at a breakneck speed. Like, this has a pacing that would be like, even fast for today. Like, it does not slow down. And I think partially because if it did, you may start thinking about what is happening and how more and more ludicrous this is becoming. And it's like, does this really make sense? Does this really, you have to buy into it. Like, if you don't buy into it, there's so many holes to poke, in the sense of like, does this really make sense? Like, would he really make this? So there's a lot of that going on for sure. But I have to say, I did have a good time with it. Does it rank as one of the greatest comedies of all time? That's a hard thing to put on anything. I think the fact that I still laughed at the movie all these years later is a good sign. And like I mentioned, the performances are strong. But I do think it is a movie that is, I would say, lightweight, in the sense of it's a bit, it's a fun romp, but it is a fun romp that is a bit overtly ludicrous at times, I think purposely so.
I think that's a good way to put it. For me, like, my first reaction was, this film is unhinged. Like,
yes.
This film, like, remember when we were talking about the Hitchcock series and we had the Stranger on a Train and we had the carousel go bananas and go like fly off the track? Like, to me, this movie is doing that. Like, this movie is off the tracks. It's spinning out of control and it's completely unhinged, but not necessarily in a negative way. I think it really depends on what your bandwidth is for the breakneck pace that you're talking about and the absolute crazy antics that ensue. Like, to me, this film's either going to work for you or it's going to be like nails on a chalkboard for you.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be anywhere in the middle to me. Like, it might work at different levels, but if it's not working for you because of the pace or because of some of the sound and some of the different things, like, I anticipate you're shutting it off, or you're walking out, or at some point you're going to be like, I can't take it anymore, and you're just going to shut it off. I don't know. Like, I feel like those are like some of the reactions you're going to get. For me, it's interesting because you talk about like comedies and how they hold up, and I agree that a lot of times comedies don't necessarily hold up as well. I think that's true, though, way more for comedies of our lifetime and slightly before, because I feel like those comedies from especially like the late 80s through, I don't know, probably still today, I guess, but at least, 90s and 2000s, they rely a lot on references and things that are tying back to pop culture or society or things in that nature in a way that makes them age less gracefully than I think some of the classic like comedies from like silent film era. Like, a lot of those comedies work, right? Because it's not referencing stuff that you had to be alive during that time. It's just funny things. Like, it's just funny reactions, funny ways to do things, funny ways to interact with people. And I think it works better. Like, I think there's a higher chance of an early comedy holding up than there is more of a modern comedy. Do you agree?
I think for the most part, I don't necessarily think it's always just about references. I think it can be somewhat about style and a sense of like it. I do agree, like, when it's more of almost like clowning in a way, like it's when it's that fit, like, because a lot of silent film comedy is all about the physical performance and things like that. Certainly, those hold up more, but when it is more situational, it can have some struggles in how it kind of develops, and especially in the sense of like what it's making fun of. Sometimes comedy, I think, doesn't hold up well because of who makes the butt of the joke, and sometimes that can be problematic in that sense, where it doesn't necessarily have that. But I do think it's a good point where if you look at a lot of comedies, it tends to be, especially like you mentioned, a lot about, it's all about what you bring into it, not necessarily what the movie is doing. And I think that's probably why we don't see as many great comedies, where with this, everything is there for you. There may be some other jokes that we're not getting that are certain references to certain times and things like that, but it's really about the characters. That's where the comedy is coming from in that situations. And that is easy to keep up with or understand way down the line.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know before we get into some of the actual story, not that we're going to get into a lot into the story in this one, but before we go into like some of the sequences, I guess, and some of the gags and things of that nature, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on Hepburn and Grant, especially obviously since this is a Grant retrospective. Now, Katharine Hepburn comes into this film as the one that hasn't really done comedy, right? Or, especially not this type of comedy. And you mentioned, or you referenced the fact that she has people helping, like, I know they mentioned one of the vaudeville veterans, Walter Catlett, that comes in and tries to work with her and get her to understand her role in this. But this is more out of her wheelbox, right? And Cary Grant comes from a vaudeville background, which makes it seem like this should be right up his alley. My initial reaction in the first, maybe call it 20% of this film, I thought Katharine Hepburn was way more natural in her character and in her role than Cary Grant was in the beginning. I'm not saying that Cary Grant didn't find his feet and kind of get in the rhythm at one point, and maybe he's doing it intentionally because of the ludicrousness of the character he's playing, but I felt like he was almost not quite clicking at the beginning, and I felt like Katharine Hepburn just like somehow came across as completely natural in her role. What was your take on those two and their performances, either at the beginning or throughout the film?
I think Cary Grant is very over the top, for certainly. I think he is leaning into the nerd type of character. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was ever truly that convincing, because he's always still Cary Grant, but I do think he is. It was interesting reading that Christopher Reeve took a lot of inspiration of his performance of Superman and Clark Kent from this movie. And you kind of see that because he really is playing up the nerd angle with the glasses and the way he behaves and things like that. But as the movie goes on, I think that facade begins to, I think, go away, and it's better for it because it never feels very natural for him. That is certainly not his strength. He never comes. He's just too tall and too demanding or of the screen to really pull off that type of schlubby being bossed around. It wasn't. It felt very forced to begin with, and I think
I feel like he's the hardest person in Hollywood to play a nerd.
Yeah.
He's Cary Grant. He's somehow incapable of not looking like James Bond, attractive and all this other stuff. And then they're like, well, just play the nerd. I'm like, I'm not buying it. Sorry.
You know what I was reminded of watching it, and this is a weird reference, but when The Rock hosted Saturday Night Live, he did a skit where he was Superman and Clark Kent, and it was, everyone knew that he was actually Superman because he trying to be Clark Kent, he had this cape on, he was just so big and so obvious. It was everyone knew. It was just kind of running joke that people weren't fooled. Right. And that's what I was reminded of this. I know that you got the glasses, but I can still see the S through that. So
did you think Katharine Hepburn came across as someone who didn't have as much problem actually filling out this comedic role?
Definitely. I love
she struggled.
No, I didn't get any struggle from her whatsoever. Her character was is an oddball in a lot of ways. She's very they do make a good pairing. I do think they bounce off one another, and it was intriguing seeing the kind of the general roles swapped for especially for a movie this old. But yeah, I think she really watching this. If you told me this was, I never would have thought this was her first performance in a role like this, because she came off really natural, and Her comedic timing is really well done. Some of the physicality, I don't think she was maybe as strong with.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it was like she had like fake fall and and near the end and stuff like that, where it's like that maybe like that type of comedy wasn't her
Right.
strength, but more the dialogue driven, the more character work. I think she really went for it.
I want to talk about two other characters before we get into some more of the plot. But I want to see if I'm alone and I was the dumb one of the group or not. At what point, like, did you know that Baby and the bringing up Baby was going to be a tiger before you watched this?
I had no idea. I had no idea there was a leopard in this movie.
Or a leopard, excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, well, I was today years old when I learned that bringing up Baby is about a leopard.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like that should be a bigger, because like some of the stuff they do with this, the leopard. I know, like they used, it wasn't always where they did some camera tricks, so it seemed like he was in the back of the car when it really wasn't or whatnot. But yeah, I had no idea it was. And looking at the poster, I should have realized it because they're with a leopard, but I never put two and two together.
No, not at all. And then the other thing I want to do is kind of more of not a specific character, but if we're looking at all of the rest of the characters, so all the supporting characters. I know Howard Hawks, who is the director. This movie gets panned like right away, just to kind of put that out there. Like it does not go over well. There's a lot of people that are saying it's going to be a flop. It gets very negative reviews out of the gate. And Howard Hawks, I don't know if this is in an interview or a quote or if it's just a summary of things that have been gathered around what he said, but I know one thing that he came to the conclusion that in his mind, and I say like at the time it was panned because now it's received pretty well. Like it's on a lot of lists of like funniest movies of all time, and it's got a nice Rotten Tomato score. I think I want to say it's in the upper 90s. So it's got a lot of acclaim since then. But in that moment, he was under the impression that it was not received well and it was a critical failure. And one thing that he attributed that to is he said that he had made a mistake by not putting a normal person in the film. And his idea was because everybody was crazy and everybody was zany and screwbally and all this other stuff, that it wasn't going to work as well. Like he thought he needed somebody that was like normal for the audience either to relate to or to ground things or whatever. And I guess that he takes that and like has that affect a film that he does later by inserting some people that are more quote unquote normal. What was your take on the entire supporting cast that we get and everybody that kind of comes and goes in this fast-paced, crazy film that we're talking about?
Honestly, it's weird. It's interesting saying that because I didn't think about it watching it, like that there wasn't a normal character. I guess I saw, her aunt as pretty normal. I know she's not in the movie a lot, or the lawyer and things like that. I guess I felt like although they had their moments, were pretty normal. I mean, he did have like the sheriff who was a bit of a dimwit, and so I could see like everyone was a bit exaggerated in the sense, but I never was an issue with me that there wasn't that straight man or straight woman to bounce off of.
No,
so either. In a way, I felt like Cary Grant was that, like he was the person trying to keep things normal, like he was always trying to get. So that to me was like he was playing that role.
Yeah, because even though he is very over the top at the beginning and not necessarily believable as the nerd, when it comes to his actual actions and dialogues, like he's the one that seems sane while the world is going crazy around him. Like he's the one trying to keep up with is it Elizabeth? Is that Katharine Hepburn's name? Susan. He's the one trying to keep up with Susan. And all of the other things. And, obviously we kind of, I guess I buried the lead with the whole bone thing. Like he's a paleontologist who's trying to put this massive brontosaurus together and he's missing one bone. And that's kind of this whole thing is him trying to get a hold of that bone, find the bone once he loses it, and then secure, $1 million to fund his work and things of that nature. But I agree with you. I think he definitely is. I related more to him. The only difference is I don't know if I would have had the patience he had with everything that's like, you're hitting my car. Like, what are you doing right now? Like you're destroying my car. And those types of things. So I think I related to him in some ways, even though I wouldn't have reacted probably the way he did to a lot of it. He was definitely, I guess enough of, I don't know. It's weird because you're also like trying to buy him as this. I know it's a comedy. We're not supposed to think this serious about it, but he's like this paleontologist, intelligent doctor, but he's coming across almost as someone who's not intelligent throughout the rest of it in like what he's putting up with and all the other stuff. And obviously at one point he becomes smitten by her, or there's a love triangle. She comes across as crazy.
Yeah.
Like she's insane. Like,
yeah.
there's moments where you're like, oh, I remember there was like a certain moment where I kind of thought to myself, oh, she's like actually not okay in the head. Like she's not just acting. She's not just like playing like a trick on him. She's actually insane.
Yeah, because she was like ready to marry him right away. It was interesting. Like she certainly, and at first, like when we first started, I was wondering if she was more of a trickster than, when you had that moment with a purse. I'm like, is she purposely doing this to try to get him in trouble? Like, is there, because like I said, going into this, I didn't watch anything. I just watched it cold. I'm like, oh, is it going to be like she, is really like this? And I guess maybe I had the last movie we watched for the Alfred Hitchcock retrospective in my head with the Jewel Thief and whatnot. It's like, oh, is that going to be where it goes? And it's like, oh no, she's really scatterbrained. On it, like I feel like her character feels very modern in that way. Like, I don't know if you ever heard the term like the Manny Pixie Dream Girl, and she's not quite like that, but the sense of like she is very in the moment. Like she's very she is doing the role you would expect Cary Grant to do, or what Cary Grant would be known for, in the way that she's pursuing him, and she's kind of coming up with all these crazy schemes that keep them together and everything like that, which is interesting. Like when she calls about the leopard attacking her, and it was like, wow. So I can understand she's crazy, and maybe she is, but maybe he is too, and maybe that's what they both need.
I'd almost like to see her character in this film and his character in North by Northwest, like have some time together and see how that all plays out. So I do have to ask you, did you, after the film, attempt to do a leopard call by any chance?
I did not try to do a leopard call, which
that was ridiculous.
Yeah, and ridiculous is a good word for this, because it is, you get this leopard. Like, I didn't realize the leopard was going to be such a key part of this entire movie. Like, oh, we get a leopard, and we're staying with this leopard. Like, this is going to be where the story is. And then we get another leopard. That's where it's like, okay, like you're not even trying. You're just like, we're just going to have another leopard escape from the circus. Like this, it's basically live action Looney Tunes, and that's not necessarily bad.
We got two leopards. We got a dog. And we got a bunch of crazy people. And did you know that the leopard was the same leopard? Like the two leopards are played by the same leopard.
I assume so, because they seemed the same size. Like the one didn't seem bigger. So
I don't know if they're ever in a scene together. I guess maybe they're not, or they did some tricks with it. But yeah, I guess it's played by the same leopard. And interesting to see that apparently Katharine Hepburn was totally cool with the leopard being on set. Cary Grant, not so much. I guess they had to use a double in every scene that his character had contact with a leopard. Like he was having no part of it.
I don't disagree with him. I also
this film is not made today. This film could not be made today. Like it was.
Well, the one scene with the dog and the leopard, like, which like that seemed like they were really that seemed pretty violent. Like the way they were interacting, like fighting, and I wasn't sure if I know dogs sometimes when they're playing, they look like they're fighting, but it looked pretty brutal. I'm like, this seems a little brutal. So yeah, that was interesting. But
it would be made today, but it could be made today, but it would be very different. Like there would be some CGI
it would be a CGI. Yeah, right. It would be a CGI leopard for the most part. Maybe they'd have, thinking of Life of Pi, where they had the tiger. But I mean, that's obviously a much different movie. A great movie, but very different.
I did want to read one trivia bit that I grabbed off of, I think it was IMDb, but it did say Katharine Hepburn did have one very close call with the leopard. So she was wearing a skirt that was lined with little metal pieces to make it swing prettily, is the word that they used. And I guess she turned around abruptly at one point, and the leopard made a lunge for her back. And they said only the intervention of the trainer's whip saved Hepburn. And here, I love this next line. the leopard was not allowed to roam around freely after that. What? He was allowed to roam freely before that? What? What are we doing here?
That was, it was before the tagline, no animals were harmed before in the making of this movie. I'm sure. Yeah, certainly.
So obviously we get a couple different things here. We get the tame leopard that was sent to this lady from her brother, because that's also what you do. You just send like your relative a leopard in the mail, I guess. And then we have the leopard that was that was being taken from the circus to probably somewhere not great because he was out of control, and I assume he was needing to be. Were they taking him to a zoo? Where they weren't putting him down, right? They were taking him to a zoo.
I think so.
Or
yeah,
something like he wasn't going to be allowed in the circus anymore, obviously. And then they let the bad leopard or the disobedient leopard out of the back of a car because they think it's the good leopard. So we have a whole confusion with that. We have a dog that sometimes is being chased by leopards. We have the dog who took the bone from the dinosaur and buried it in the yard somewhere, and we're digging up hundreds of holes to try to find that. Obviously we have a whole sequence with jail cells where some people are being locked in and some people are being let out. What did you think of once they're in the jail cell and then Katharine Hepburn turns on this, like, we're part of a gang and starts talking like a gangster? Like, what did you think of that whole sequence and then kind of how this movie plays out in the end?
That finale is just like the way it keeps building. And I think it actually did a pretty good job of like setting that up throughout, so like it all kind of makes sense. Stealing of the car, it all builds upon itself, so it doesn't all come out of nowhere. But the one movie that I oddly was thinking of during that was Crazy Stupid Love, and how you had all these different plot threads kind of coming together that all started the kind of, and it got crazier and crazier. This one's different because it's not like a big surprise or reveal, but it's just these bets building upon one another. And certainly you could see the vaudeville type of comedy going into it. But that to me was just defining this movie. It was just all a bit ludicrous all the time. And when she went with, she was being a gangster and things like that, it was like, okay, like it was a bit of a left turn, and it was just, this felt, if you told me this entire movie was improv, I would be like, okay, that all makes sense. Because it does have that feeling where it's just, yes, and everyone is just yes, anding and going from one thing to another. And it doesn't necessarily always have the most logical reasoning for that. Because it's like, did she know there was a window there? Like, was that her plan all along? It was just, I don't know. But it's one of those things, like you said, I think you'll know very quickly if you like this movie. And by that point, I was bought in, even if I could recognize just how ludicrous everything was getting. How about yourself?
I do appreciate the deep cover reference, by the way. The yes and I like it. I was a little like when she started doing the leopard gang stuff, I was like, okay, like we've gone a little too far at this point, like Jerry the Nipper and Swinging Door Susie and everything. Yeah. But I was invested on like, how is this actually going to play out? Like, how are they going to get everything back to where it needs to be? He needs the bone. We need the right leopard wrapped up. And then I was like, well, we still are completely ignoring the fact that, he's engaged to be married and already, I think, missed his wedding or missed something like important. Yeah. What did you think of that whole angle with Alice, who is his fiance, who clearly is not into him that much? It doesn't seem like in the beginning, because it's like, yeah, I want to get married, but you just need to keep working, and I don't want a honeymoon, and I don't want to be romantic with you at all. Like, what did you think of that angle, and then how she's like just so easily discarded in this whole movie, and we end up with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn together?
They definitely did everything they could to make us hate her as quickly as possible. It's like, oh, she's just a horrible, horrible person, and the way it, like, in a way, it was like, it surprised just in how, like mentioned earlier, like how gender roles were swapped in this, because I can't think of a movie at this time where you'd see an actor like Cary Grant basically be the sheepish man that is just being told what to do. But it's fitting of the film in the sense of like everything is over the top. But yeah, I think that's the one thing I would say is like all these decisions are very transparent. Like why they're doing it, and again, but I think it's just trying to keep going as quickly as possible so you don't think about it too much. So, yeah, that's the thing is like the moment you start to think, stop to question, like, what does he? Shouldn't he be more concerned about his wedding? But then you're like, okay, but she was a horrible person, so maybe he doesn't want to get married anyway. So yeah, it was just like it was trying to cover all of his bases.
And then of course we have the actual, like, I guess, climactic ending or whatever of the dinosaur bones being toppled. Yeah, he only spent like 4 years of his life assembling.
You think that's how they figured out that brontosauruses aren't actually a real dinosaur?
Like, wah, wah, you're not a very good paleontologist.
Yeah. That's when they opened up on that. I'm like, oh man, he's gonna be really sad when he finds out that or did they go back with that? Because I thought they discovered.
No, I don't. I think it's Brachiosaurus and like some other things. I haven't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's real, but someone could correct us. Well, I should call my cousin. He's actually isn't a paleontologist, so he can scream at the record right now. So one thing I have a question about, like, and I don't know, you may have watched more classic films than I have. Maybe if we were to like add them up, you probably have more in the 1930s and 40s than I do. We always hear in modern times that people have different sounds based on where they come from, right? Like you have the Boston accent or whatever. You have somebody that you can tell is from New York or someone from New Orleans, or like you have like geographic accents and ways you talk, right? Because my mind's blanking and I can't think of real words that describe those things. But one thing that was dawning on me as I'm watching this, and I don't know if it's a factor of the recording equipment and the microphones, but is there also, I mean, I know there's lexicon that comes and goes. Like I know there's words that were used in the 30s that are not used in the 70s, that are not used in the 2000s. Like I'm not talking about just like words that come and go, but people, like, is it the way they recorded vocals in this time period, or do you feel like people just literally sounded different when they talked in the 1930s than, and the reason I'm saying this is because I feel like some people are turned off to classic movies because of how especially females sound when their voices are recorded from this time period. Because I can totally see somebody thinking that, number one, Katharine Hepburn doesn't stop talking in this film. Like she talks a ton in this film. Like if you had to count up the lines, I'm guessing that like the lines per minute, like her ratio would be pretty good. And I feel like some people in today's audience would be hearing the nonstop aspect of her lines, but also there's like I don't know, I want to call it gratiness. Like I used the word like nails on a chalkboard earlier. Like Amanda had to leave the room when I was watching this because she couldn't take the sound anymore of hearing Katharine Hepburn talking. And I'm not saying like there's anything wrong with Katharine Hepburn. I'm not trying to say that, but there's something about like some of these classic films and how the audio is done, or maybe it's just how people spoke back then that comes across different to me. Do you think that, or what is your take on that?
I think certainly there's a certain cadence and a certain style, that people, when they think about that time, that implore. I guess I didn't find it as much with Katharine Hepburn. I didn't find like her way of talking all that different. She certainly is very fast paced, and I mean, there's just a certain like affectation to like the way she speaks, but I don't know. I didn't. I thought there was something about
like the tinniness of like the way they recorded it that makes it like accentuated, maybe.
Perhaps I know. Like, it's interesting you mention that because I just recently watched Some Like It Hot, and one of the characters in that basically does impersonates another character, and he creates a voice for it that sounds a lot like Cary Grant. And there's a joke, and one of the character jokes is like, "No one really talks like that. Why are you talking like that?" Which made me think of like, that's just, maybe that was a dig at Cary Grant and the way he speaks. But yeah, I mean, I didn't notice as much with this. I feel like you've seen it much more with a lot of like classic noir and things like that, where when Hepburn was putting on that show of pretending to be part of the gang, where she was keeping that type of style, and I certainly saw it there. But when she was just being her normal self, which was abnormal to begin with. And I didn't really notice it as much.
Yeah. This film gets credit for a couple of things as well. I know that there was other screwball comedies before this, but a lot of people kind of point to this as like one of the, like, I guess, godfathers of this zany, like, I don't think any film has ever been quite like this one from a pace standpoint and from like how unhinged it is. But do you feel like this one kind of had an impact on comedies that came afterwards in this style, or do you think it's kind of a one of a kind?
I think you could certainly see like a lot of romantic comedies that came after that have a lot of, you know, certain elements of this one for sure. You know, especially you think of like the zaniness, like even like something like I Love Lucy, which like in the way like you had so many hijinks and things like that. I certainly could see a lot of that compared to here, and it's very similar in the sense of you have Lucy, who's the one where he's doing all the craziness, where you know, similar to this. So I think you can see a lot. I can't, like you mentioned, like my experience with like 1930s comedy isn't huge, so I can't tell you if there was ones before this that this certainly aped. But even knowing like what comes next for Cary Grant, like something like His Girl Friday, other movies we're gonna do, I do think like I could see a lot of films that certainly had a go back to this type of style or try to ape this. But I'm thinking of like It Happened One Night, which I think came out before this. I'm trying to think if that. 1934. That was 1934. So for a few years before, but even that wasn't as fast-paced or insane. I think that went a certain direction with it, and then this like upped the ante like tenfold. And I'm guessing you saw a lot more of that with the 40s and 50s, certainly with the type of comedy that came.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any trivia bits that you wanted to give or final thoughts on this one as we kind of start wrapping up our thoughts on Bringing Up Baby?
One of them we talked, I wanted to talk about the one when we mentioned already regarding the connection to Superman, which feels apt comparing since Superman just recently came out. Also, apparently this might be the first time in this film where gay is used as a term meaning like what we consider gay now as, like not like as something carefree, because there's a scene where he's dressed up in this nightgown and he yells, "I'm gay," which I was not expecting that whatsoever. I can tell you that. I'm like, whoa, that was, of all the words I did, that was crazy, which did not expect that to see, but I guess.
And that's completely improv. Like he did that on his own. Like that wasn't something that was in the script. So that was definitely interesting. I think that was a good point. Like they basically said that it was used one other time in another film, but it got censored. Censors like cut it out or like made it so that it wasn't present anymore by the time it actually got to film. So yeah, it slid through on this one, I guess. What else do you have?
And I thought there's some interesting techniques they use for using the leopard, which was cool. Like the one scene where he walks into the bathroom and, you know, utilizing stained glass and stuff like that, which they said if you look, you can see it, or like, and I didn't notice it as much, but, you know, who knows if it.
There's another one that they said that they made a giant cage that we don't apparently see. Yeah. That they're inside, or that the leopard's inside, and they were like capturing the film and the sound and everything by sticking things through the bars so that you couldn't see the bars or something around those lines. I think I read.
And I thought it was kind of crazy that there was no musical score for this whatsoever, which like I didn't even notice because of just like how it.
There wasn't any time for it. Yeah, there wasn't any time for it. There was dialogue the entire time.
There was not like no one kept, you know, had their breath whatsoever.
Can you imagine this with like also like almost like a silent film soundtrack playing at the same time? Like I don't know if I would have been able to take that.
Yeah, that would be a little much. So yeah, that I found kind of fascinating, because I feel like often with score, like I don't notice it like when I first watch a movie, like I don't really notice it until like the second time. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, there wasn't any score, and I guess I could certainly see why. But yeah, that's all I had.
The only other one I had, I think, was the fact that whole segment of the dress being torn and Cary Grant walking in front of it and trying to help her hide it was from an actual experience that Cary Grant had in real life. So apparently he was talking to one of the people in the film about it, and then they decided to put it in the film as well. So definitely interesting there. And this is not the last time that we are going to see a couple of these different team ups. So first of all, Howard Hawks, who directed this one, also directed Only Angels Have Wings, which I don't think we're covering, but at least not in this first section. But he also does His Girl Friday, which will, I believe, be the next one we're going to cover. So we're going to get to see Howard Hawks with Cary Grant twice right out of the gate. And then Katharine Hepburn did 4 films, I believe, with Cary Grant. And we're going to be talking about, we talked about Bringing Up Baby, and then we will talk about the Philadelphia Story for sure. She also was in Holiday from 1938 with Cary Grant as well. So we're going to get to see a couple more of these team ups happen again as we go through this journey. The last thing I kind of wanted to ask you, Dan, since this is a Cary Grant specific like series, and we're not just looking at the films, but kind of also taking a special look at him and his performances. Obviously, we saw 4 different times where he's teaming up with Hitchcock. We had Notorious, Suspicion, North by Northwest, and The Thief. What's the Thief?
Catch a Thief?
To Catch a Thief. Sorry, I was going to say the wrong title, and I'm like, I know there's a thief in there. So we had those four ones, and we talked about how, especially a couple of them were a little bit more like James Bondy-ish, but we did get the comedy side in North by Northwest. Like with those 4 as a backdrop, like how did this one add to what you view Cary Grant as, and like what are you looking forward from the rest of this retrospective? Do you think we're going to see a lot of other different sides like we did with this one, or kind of like how did this one fit into that, like your vision of who Cary Grant was?
This, of course, I think obviously is the most that's pure comedy. This is getting to see him, I think, in his most natural state, even if in the beginning he's playing the little schlubby type of guy. So that was fun. It definitely it was good to see him like kind of utilize like some of his greatest talents as a comedian, because you got a little bit of that with the Hitchcock film. So I'm intrigued to see, like, you always those people who get prizes, they play the same character in every role. And here you get a little bit of a different character, but I'm looking to see, like, do we get more variations? Like, is he just always Cary Grant? Can he kind of escape that, just the star power that he's known for? And so far, like, I still feel like every role we've gotten, he's always Cary Grant. I enjoy Cary Grant, so I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, but I think I'm just intrigued to see, like, how that is moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, too, because the next one that we're talking about, which is His Girl Friday from 1940, is also classified as an American screwball comedy, and it's the same director. And this is also the one that apparently he tries to put, he being Howard Hawks, tries to put one or two more regular folks in there to balance out all the screwballs. So I'm interested to see like how much these two that we're covering first like mirror each other, or how His Girl Friday tones it down, or how that goes, because those are going to be an interesting comparison between the two of them. Obviously, Philadelphia Story is a romantic comedy as far as how it's labeled. So we get a little bit more comedy. Arsenic and Old Lace is a screwball black comedy. So we're definitely going to get some more comedy. And then it looks like the ones that he was nominated for, Penny Serenade is listed as a melodrama, and None But the Lonely Hearts is a drama/romance. So that may be interesting ones, because we're going to get to see a different side of him in those two. Plus, he was nominated for awards in those two. So I'm very interested to kind of see where those go. And then I think the last two we're rounding up is one's just listed as a romance, and then the last one is listed as a screwball comedy. So we're going to end with a screwball comedy as well. So I'm intrigued as to what these are all going to bring. Dan, final thoughts as we wrap this up, and also let people know how they can stay in touch with all the stuff you do.
Yeah, so far, like I said, I starting off with a strong comedy, and I think, I would be interested to see what some like modern audience thinks of this, considering like its style and pacing and how well it would hold up. But looking forward to seeing more.
Absolutely. And how can people stay in touch with you?
Oh, yeah, of course. And you can just search for Comic Concierge on all the different social media platforms.
Absolutely. You can get in touch with me at Optimus Solo. You can search the show out at the Cinema Geeks, or you can keep track of everything that happens at the website at the Geekcast Radio Network. So that does it for this episode. Tune in next time for another chance to listen to more of the Cinema Geeks as we talk about the 1940 Cary Grant film, His Girl Friday.
Lowe's has the Labor Day deals you need to give your home a new look. Buy one, get one free select interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Then, add the final touch with 2 for $8 on select 2.5 or 3-quart mums. Refresh your home and save big while doing it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Mums offer in-store only. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowe's.com/rebates for details.